So welcome everybody. It has been a long time since we have a chance to sit down and do one of these, and I am excited and like a little daunted, but you know what? We're gonna sit down and we're gonna do this thing together. Thank you everybody who resubscribed during the pre-show. Shadowcat, I see you. Thank you for that subscription. Samurex, welcome back. So wow, lots of people coming back. Kaisar77 also, hello. So the plan today is to pick up where we left off, looking at the goals and influence design for Far Verona 1.2, the big Far Verona patch, the 2020 patch, which I'd love to roll out in the next couple of months. I'd love to get it out like during January, at least like a beta version. So this is both the return to doing that design, but also kind of the like official return to doing Far Verona stuff, because December was really busy and we were all taking a break. So we're back, and it's time for Far Verona. So if you are a faction representative or a member of the faction turn, or maybe you're Kirigor Ikal, hi, welcome back, and you're waiting for something from me, whether it's information or processing a request or waiting for your turn orders, all of that stuff is about to restart again. So I will be replying to all the faction reps and doing all of that stuff very soon. So keep an eye out for that because it's January and we're going to start picking up and doing things again. But I wanted to start with a little bit of design work because honestly, I just want to get this stuff done. I want to be able to roll it into the game and see how it affects it. So we'll start today's work by reviewing what came before, reviewing what we've done so far, getting our footing, and then diving in and trying to kind of build what we need. And remember, what we're aiming for with this design, to borrow a word from video games, is we need MVP to continue on, right? We need minimum viable product. So what I need is the most baseline amount of mechanisms that we can get into play so that we can start testing them. I was gonna say IRL, but in the real environment. We need to get them out of the imaginary and into our game environment. So we don't need to make everything perfect. There's going to be adjustments. There's going to be bits and pieces that we're going to need to adjust as we go. But I want to just get us to a place where I can kind of officially create this version and roll it out to the game proper. So let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish here. First of all, let me just ogle this beautiful sector map for a few minutes. It's beautiful. I love it. I wanted to bring this up because this map, if you haven't seen it, farverona.74261700027.de. This map is a graphical representation of the Far Verona spreadsheet. So it contains obviously the sector itself, and then it has all the factions along the side with their various bits of information. And then if you zoom into a given system, it'll tell us about that system, how much influence the system is worth under the current model, and then what assets are there with their own adorable little icons. I love it. I love it so much. So this is the map that I've kind of been using to just keep track of where everything is and to, again, help me graphically understand what's happening on the spreadsheet. So like right now, the players are on Kabina in the live game. And so we know that Kabina is a deeply predominantly Seraph planet, but also includes Democratic Mandate, Triangulum, Eridanus, and Lyra units. So yeah, this is our big map. And this is sort of what I've been using to help make sense of the spreadsheet. It can really help you visualize where stuff is and kind of how the game is spread out. It's also really cool because it shows you the distance that each transportation unit has travel-wise. See, isn't that cool? What a cool map. I love it. But for today, what I really want to, yeah, right. It really does lay out the Imperial core. Also, I look how long the name of listen, if you control Gleipnir, you get 11 influence. So, prison planet, still worth something. But this map isn't as much kind of what we're focused on today. I'll show you what we want to talk about today. And I've got a bit of a chicken and an egg design problem, and we're going to go back and forth between the two, I think. But basically, what I need is to resolve goals and influence. And those two things are related to one another, which is why we're kind of designing them as we go. So I'm working on influence, then bringing goals up to match. Then I'm working on goals, bringing influence up to match. To get to a point, I think I'm going to have to launch both of them at once. Influence is a way to measure things. And so I think maybe we want to finish understanding influence and then use what we learn from designing that to finish off goals. Like, I think that might be where we've landed on this. But we'll go through it and then we'll decide from there. So influence right now is a way for us to measure. Sorry, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so I can actually see it. There we go. So influence is a way for us to understand how much cultural and personal influence the various factions have on the people of the universe, right? So we know, using this map physically, what units are on a world, and we can kind of guess, right? Like if you zoom in to Cabina, you can see that Cabina clearly has a lot of Seraph personnel, a lot of Seraph stuff in this sector, right, on Cabina. But that doesn't necessarily indicate how valuable these certain things are to the population of the world, right? Now, we represent the value of a world based on how many people live there, multiplied by how useful they are. In the sense of like socially useful, it's tech level, right? Tech level indicates to us how valuable any individual person is. So if Cabina, for example, has several million inhabitants and they are all TL4 people, right? They are educated and equipped with TL4 level stuff, that makes them that amount of valuable. So a planet's inherent influence value is based on those two factors cross multiplied. There is no world that is inherently more valuable. The inherence comes from the tech level of the planet, right? So like Imperial Prime, you'd think might be like more important, but really when it comes down to it, it's about people times tech level, right? That's what we've decided indicates to us about like how much a planet is worth, right? So the reason that we want to do influence first is because it creates for us a metric, right? It's not doing anything on its own. Influence is a metric that allows us to potentially rope that into another thing. It's like adding new stats to Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like I could say you have a new statistic. All D&D characters have a new statistic called awesome. And your awesome is rated between 1 and 10, right? So if you have a 10 in awesome, you're awesome. If you have a 1 in awesome, you're probably not very awesome. That is your ability. If you scour the rest of the game, you won't find anything connected to that. It's just, for you, an indication of how awesome you are. It's a useless mechanic. Mechanisms that don't have any impact on the game, irrelevant, right? Except when it comes to fiction. So the fiction that we are creating, and when I talk about fiction, I don't mean in a traditionally like a normal quote unquote tabletop role-playing game. The fiction is what we imagine to be the universe that we are playing in, right? So when I say Throndir the Ranger picks up his bow and fires an arrow into the wall, you have changed the fiction in your mind, right? The fiction in your mind started with Throndir empty-handed in a room, and now I have used my description to move your fictive space to change your mind. So now you're imagining Throndir holding a bow and there is an arrow in the wall, right? So what we're doing right now is we're creating another way to measure and adjust the fiction. So the rules of a game tell us what we can and cannot do to modify our own and someone else's fictional space, right? If my character has an awesome score of 2, and I describe my character doing the most awesome thing in the world, you might say, hold on, your stat indicates that your character is in the bottom 20% of most awesome people, if it's evenly distributed. How is it possible that your character would do something so awesome, right? This is functionally the same as saying, my character is a human, I can see in the dark. Why? We have no reason to believe that. So the mechanisms of the game indicate to us what we can and cannot say about the fiction of the game. Now, in this game particularly, and if you care at all about game theory, that feeling of like, wait a second, the thing you're describing doesn't match the mechanisms, that's called Ludonarrative Dissonance. And it's when the narrative and the game, the Ludens, if you will, they butt heads, right? And that feeling of like, well, the rules say this, but you've described something that doesn't make sense. That's dissonance, right? You feel that disconnect between those two things. Now, in the game that we are playing, there is a slightly different variant of that narrative mechanism thing, right? So we're getting pretty deep into the game design theory stuff, but that's okay. It's fine. It's helping me frame this up in my brain, and hopefully it's helping you get an idea of what's going on. So anyway, Verona faction turn is in itself, from the beginning, without us fiddling with it, it's a mechanisms first game. I generally divide games into either mechanisms first or fiction first to help me understand what order in which to process things, okay? So the difference being, fiction first, you say, this is what is happening, and then you find the appropriate mechanism to either reinforce or confirm or challenge that, right? So in Apocalypse World, which is a fiction first game, you say, my character picks up their gun and shoots the other character in the back. Then you check the mechanisms, you find the shoot someone in the back move, and you follow the protocols of that move, right? Fiction happens, mechanism triggers, you go back to the fiction to find out what mechanism. Now, Verona, the faction turn, and honestly, like Stars Without Number in general, along with Dungeons and Dragons and most traditional role-playing games, is not fiction first. It's mechanisms first, right? And this is a guiding principle for how we play the Verona faction turn. A mechanisms first game says, this is the rule to follow, narrate accordingly, right? I draw my sword, I make an attack roll, I miss, now I describe how I missed, right? I cast a spell, you fail your saving throw, we describe the effects of the spell, both mechanically and narratively. Then the narrative happens to explain the mechanisms. That makes sense? So in this game, the rules tell us what kind of story we can tell each other about Acheron Row. So part of what I wanted to do with influence is help clear up lore and ideological priority, right? A way for us to look at our character sheets and for certain factions to say, we do this because we have this much influence, which allows us to make these statements. Now, I might end up breaking up the influence into percentages to further help, but the point here is that I want to provide for you additional nuance for your faction character sheet so that we can resolve these sorts of issues, right? Yeah, influence total A versus influence total B. So now we know that if, let's say on Dio Mikado, let's say some factions are working to create new fiction about the culture and the people and the stuff that's going on in Dio Mikado, House Aquila, any statement they make about Dio Mikado, mechanically at this point, has a 75.7% chance of being true. If I really had to do it, if we really had to push, and let's say all the factions on Dio had a stake in some kind of narrative they wanted to put forward, I could theoretically now roll percentile dice to see who wins because of the base amount of influence on this world, right? So if there is a disagreement, we now have theoretically a metric to say, well, 13.5% of the time, the Trilliant Ring, House Fornax will get to say what they need to say about Dio, but most of the time, it's Aquila, right? Because this is their homeworld, because of base of influence, because of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this helps me and the mods understand who gets the responsibility of what in the lore, and it should theoretically provide a framework for people who are interested in the lore to have a mechanism first that then moves them into that. Now, so I would consider that to be the soft benefit, right? The soft benefit of this system, of the influence system. That's the benefit of it there, right? The hard benefit, which is to say the mechanism benefit, that is something we haven't decided yet, right? We've talked a little bit about it, but I mean, as Christoph in chat says, influence is a mechanism of narrative control. In the same way, I got to tell you, strength or dexterity or any ability in any role-playing game is a mechanism of narrative control. Think about it this way, okay? So we have two characters. We have Adam's character and we have Dave's character. Now, Adam and Dave are both interested in influencing the narrative when it comes to combat, right? They're interested in getting to say things with a certain degree of certainty in combat. Now, Dave, as a result, makes their character to have a high combat score, a high fighting score. They have armor, they have lots of hit points, they've purchased a bunch of combat related traits. And then Adam, the moron, makes a character who spreads their abilities out across a bunch of different stuff. Maybe they can paint, they can sing, they can dance, they can kind of sword fight, but we both care about combat. Adam has made a mistake. Dave has made a good character, because when it comes down to it, when the GM says combat occurs, Dave's character has more tools and better tools for influencing that situation, right? So honestly, having a high strength is a form of narrative control over strength-based scenarios, right? Scenes in which strength matters are more likely to be controlled by characters with higher strength. That's just how it works, right? Because success in what you want is a form of narrative control. So the idea here is to create this system because we're essentially adding a stat to the characters, and then we are able to use that to adjust our understanding of the game's ongoing kind of world stuff. And as a GM, me and the mods have more ability to understand who is more likely to get what they want when it comes down to altering the lore of a place or a thing. Yeah. So that's our base level, like understanding why we're doing what we're doing. I think for now, we looked at a few variations of influence. I think the version we have right now is pretty good, right? So like understanding, I think the tiers work. I think this is fine. I think the tech level stuff is good. Everything looking at it seems pretty good. I think I'm tempted to adjust the value of base of influence, but I like that this is a way, boosting BOI is a way to get more influence. So I think that's pretty good, and I'm really, really appreciative of everybody who did the math in the background to get that map set up so I can see some operating stuff. Now, I think you're wrong, Kaisar. So Kaisar in chat says influence is a stat that gives one player narrative control at the expense of another player. I disagree that that's any different than a normal RPG, right? So if I have 10 strength and you have 20 strength, you now have narrative control at my expense in situations where we clash. If you are the player and I am the GM and you have 20 strength and I have a character with 10, you have narrative control over my characters in that situation. Like, I think narrative control is constantly present in role-playing games. It's just that generally role-playing games are designed to share that control amicably rather than struggle over that control. Yeah, I think that's completely normal in most role-playing games. Well, so this is the thing, Azernox, you're shouting about, but cultural power planets. What is that? Is it a thing, right? Like we haven't looked at anything else that affects like influence yet, right? We haven't looked at if there are planetary tags. We haven't looked at those kinds of things. So those are additional things we can add as multipliers. So I think maybe now that I talk about this, I think absolutely that we want to finish off. We're the closest to being finished on influence. So I think we'll want to resolve that, and then we'll go from there. So let's take a look at what we might be missing in terms of additional things that modify influence, right? So we have the three base things, or the two base things that affect every planet, right? The situation here is population times tech level, right? So these are the two things that we multiply to allow us to understand the base amount. And then we add one influence per hit point of a base of influence, right? Because it has the word in it. You'd think that it isn't influence as it is now challenging narrative on all planets rather than restricting it to a specific narrative. I mean, it lets you know what control you have over the lore of a planet, right? It gives you an indication of your percentage. And if there's a conflict, it lets you know that there's a chance. So fundamentally, when it comes down to it, if there's a big fight on, let's say, Yakia, where Eridanis and Seraph can't decide what's going to happen, right? If Eridanis says, on Yakia, everybody wears shoes on their head, right? And Seraph says, no, on Eridanis, or on Yakia, everybody wears only one shoe. And they can't agree. Maybe the obvious choice here is wear one shoe on your head, but they can't agree. I can say, okay, fine, let's just roll. Right? Okay. So we got 71. So we can look and we can say, okay, 71. All right. Well, Seraph, I guess you get to make this call about shoes. If it really, really comes down to it, right? Like, I would prefer not to ever have to engage that, but at the very, very most basic, there is now a rule for dealing with those kinds of clashes, right? And whether I'm doing it or the players are doing this as they figure out their lore stuff, this is now a metric for us to make those decisions, right? Logically, you can't wear two shoes on one head. Come on. I mean, if you tie the shoelaces together, and is a planet's resources something that is included in the calculation? I mean, yeah, tech level, the tech level is part of that, I think. Yeah. So let's take a look. Let's take a look and see if there's anything else, right? So each faction has assets and tags to add up influence. And then that total creates our percentage. Right. Okay. All right. So adding additional assets builds up the total in your favor. Yeah, tech level is like a stand-in for development or whatever, right? But yeah, I think we are missing a few things like the planetary tags, because some planets are by definition worth more than others. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at the current faction tags and the current planet tags that we can use. The +10 for Homeworld status is doubling up on BOI HP. They're counting the same thing, causing influence to swing more than intended. I don't know. I want Homeworld to really be massively influential. I want that. I want it. I want it to be very swingy. I think that Homeworld status should be, I want Homeworld to be like massively difficult to overcome. The only way I'm going to adjust Homeworld is if it's not influential enough. Yeah, Homeworld BOIs have massive HP. Exactly. That's what I want. Yes, that's absolutely by design. Yeah, because if Homeworld doesn't matter as much, it's really easy to steamroll people on their own home planet. And I don't want that. I want people to fundamentally have control over their own Homeworld's lore de facto, like by default. Yeah. Homeworld BOIs. Oh, I see. So it's like the free BOI you get from the Homeworld. No, I want them separate. Yeah, I want them to be separate. I don't mind that they count double. I think that's fine. Yeah, because the Homeworld can have no Homeworld. They can have no BOI there. The base of influence bonus is based on, I think, max HP. But it could be based on current. I guess that's something worth noting, right? Current or max? I think either one is good. Yeah. I mean, I like both. I sort of like current because you can pick away at it. Yeah, I think current is probably better. Let's do that. Yeah, current means the relationship changes more. Yep, I like that. Homeworld tag is 10, planetary government is +2. I don't think planetary government matters as much as Homeworld. Remember when you are designing a system, you are making statements about the universe, right? So I think that planetary government, honestly, like, just isn't as valuable as boots on the ground plus cultural deep cultural it's like embedding, right? Like you could lose everything and it's still your homeworld, so you still have this base modifier even if you don't have any assets, even if you're not technically the government of your own planet. Yeah, because you have to move your homeworld. It's much more difficult. Yeah, I think that you can occupy France, but it's not suddenly going to become Germany. Exactly. Yeah, and that for me, I think Homeworld stands. I don't feel like it's necessary to adjust that. Do dead factions Homeworld influence still count towards that world's influence? I haven't decided about like dead factions yet. Yeah, I haven't figured. That's something to ponder. How they influence. I think they should too. I kind of like that they do, because then you have to like clean them out. Yeah, I almost think I'm leaning towards yes. Especially with the thing with Homeworld though, if you're not a faction, is it still your homeworld, right? You need a mechanism to remove them. Yeah. Something there, but it's extraneous to core. Yeah. I mean, I think we come back to it. It's something that we decide later, right? So yeah, problem solve. I think these are things to look at. Does a faction's influence cap out? I don't think so. I think we answered that. I guess I should leave it so I know I have an answer. So the answer to this was no, I think it's fine. No, it's both easier. It makes sense to just leave it as is. There we go. Okay, cool. Hey, Max. Okay, so a faction's influence, we've decided doesn't cap out. Does a homeworld give some kind of minimum base? Yes, we figured this one out as well, for now, at least. So homeworld grants a significant influence bonus. We already kind of figured that out. Okay, all right, so we need to figure out what impact do dead factions have on influence. How do we remove that influence in game? Yeah, like the church doesn't disappear because they graduated from the game. Some kind of like influence stat. Yeah. So we'll have to figure that out. Let's put it all aside for now. Okay. All right. So let's take a look. I'm going to move these. I'm going to move all these example ones down to the bottom because we don't really need them right now. Okay. All right. So let's see. Let's start by figuring out the final... Let's start by figuring out the final kind of like stuff. This bit, how much are things worth? Because that will let us understand the full structure. So, okay, we've got this is set. That's fine. Tech level is also fine. This math is all good, I think. So what I need to do is no, TL 3, 2, and 1 are worth less than each one before them, right? They don't scale exactly the same. Yeah, it shouldn't be 1.25. Tech level 5 is, I almost think tech level 5 is too low. I almost think tech level 5 should be 3 because it's such a big deal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Biosphere, like theoretically, Biosphere should only affect you at tech level 3, 2, or 1. Because by the time you're tech level 4, you have the technology to essentially ignore your environment. So I don't think... Yeah, I don't think that's a thing. Can a faction have influence on a planet it doesn't have any factions on? Like House Lyra having influence on Heroa due to psychic worship? No. No, because that's different. Like... It's not on a scale that we are really interested in the sense that it's like everyone on this planet likes blue. So if you wear a blue shirt, you might have higher influence. If you paint your spaceships blue and wear blue shirts and, change your name to Blue Corp, people on this planet might like you more, but you have to actually be there to do those things. Remember that factions can only influence things via the stats they have, which are to say tags, assets, and that's it, really. So we can't really build a system outside of that. Yeah. Should also be exponential with a sharp jump. Anyway, so I'm not too worried about fucking with that. Yeah, and they're actual, but well, the thing is, they're actual cunning, wealth, and force. Those are ephemeral because they're not, you can't use them to affect the game outside of conflict resolution. Anyway, so tech levels modifier, amount of people. This gives us the value of a planet. And then we add up based on, this is how we get that value. This is how we access it and make it our own, right? So miscellaneous bonuses or penalty and faction tags. Okay, so let's dig into this. We need to figure this stuff out. So what else? What miscellaneous bonuses, penalties, and tags apply? Question mark. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's start with faction tags, right? Because I think we're gonna need to design a new one here in not too long. Okay, so faction tags that might influence this thing. So I guess I need a list of the tags for factions. Do we have those in the spreadsheet? Hang on. I'm gonna open up I have so many Far Verona secrets. I don't want to accidentally show you them. Let's see here. Faction tracker. Yeah, I don't want existing faction tags. I want all of them. I want to look at all of them. So let's take a look. Okay. So we have the options for tags here, right? So these are all of our options. Pirates, colonists, deep rooted, maybe. The thing is, I don't want to change. Well, okay. These are my list of maybes, right? And then we'll come back and we'll look at them. So, okay. So deep rooted as an option. Let's see. Eugenics cult, exchange consulate. Sorry, Vagrant, I got to change you into an exchange consulate for a second. No, it's not going to let me see it. Okay, maybe... I'm not sure where this information is pulling from. So, yeah, maybe exchange. There should be a strange. Yeah, the rulebook has it, but I think it's in here too somewhere. Anyway, let me make a note here. Exchange consulate as a maybe. Let's see. What else? Fanatical, imperialists, Machiavellian, martial supremacy, mass market economists, pacifist enforcers, perimeter agency, planetary government, we already talked about, plutocratic, preceptor archive, psychic academy, savage scavengers, secret, technical expertise, theocratic, unorthodox pilots. I don't think any of these other ones really affect it. I think if anything, we would need to create a new one called like cultural influencers or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, yeah, Trilliant and Prism are both exchange consulates, so I think that they're gonna shift, right? Like, we're gonna make a new tag, and then, no, Pixis isn't a cultural influencer, they're just the Emperor. They're still space dweebs. No, that hasn't changed them on a fundamental level. Like, if I added cultural influencer, anybody who wanted to switch to that tag, I'd have to understand, like, it has to, remember, tags are representative of something that has been deeply true about that faction forever. We're just finding new ways to adjust. Also, I think secretive might modify. This is a question. Secretive is already so powerful too. So I think secretive might actually end up being you have less influence because you're secretive, but also this, I got to make a comment here because begs the question about value of stealthed assets. Are they less, right? And then, yeah, we should look at technical expertise because it modifies planetary tech level. Does the TL modification affect influence at all? My thought is no. It's like phantom bump, not an influence bump. You're getting more out of the people that are already there, but it doesn't make those people any more valuable. I think secretive might apply like a blanket modifier or something, but yeah, we gotta look at how that works. But that's also a thing. Yeah, see also assets to change local TL. I think for security's sake, for my own like understanding of the system, I think we take all of that and we just throw it out, right? Like, it doesn't affect influence. Nothing that changes local TL for the purposes of constructing assets also modifies. It's a different thing. So I think here what I'm going to end up needing is cultural influencer create as a new tag, right? So, okay, comment, create new tag whose purpose is to increase influence values, right? Okay. So I think these are the tags we need to look at in terms of how they might affect it. I think, you know what? I think we just cut deep rooted and exchange consulate because I don't want to add additional bonuses to existing tags. I think we can just huck those out. I don't think Emperor is a new tag. I think it's a state of existence, but it doesn't change who you are. No house is Emperor at its core. They are given the right to be the Emperor, but it's not innate to their character, right? Like how an elf could become a fighter or a wizard, but not a dwarf. That elf is still an elf no matter what, right? The House Imperial as an extra tag could be a thing. Now that's a point, Umbra, right? In that you could add a new tag that wouldn't negatively affect because you can have multiple tags, right? PGov is a tag on top of secretive or whatever, right? So that's another way to kind of like look at it. You get influence as the emperor. I mean, I think that assets create influence. You have control. Now, I guess this is the thing. What do we want to say about the universe? I'm trying to say the emperor doesn't have innate cultural control. The emperor has the ability and the resources to enact control, but I don't think inherently you're the emperor. The emperor immediately, their house immediately influences the universe. It's the assets, it's the homeworld, it's the base. It's increasing their overall stuff by way of their other stuff. I don't think that's the thing. I think it's a secondary. It's a secondary effect, not a primary effect. Yeah. It gives them influence in the traditional way, right? Remember, you can't gain influence on its own. It's not experience points. Influence is a reflection of things that are already true about the setting based on mechanical objects in certain places. So if you are the emperor and you want to increase, say Pixis wanted to increase their influence to compete with Eridanus, they need to spend resources. They need to be strategic about what planets they own. They need to think about that in terms of using those Pixis assets to do that, right? You can't directly buy, and I guess that's a founding principle of influence. It cannot be directly bought, right? That, I guess, let me make a founding principles. Influence is a byproduct, right? Not a commodity. Is a measured byproduct, not a separate commodity, right? Influence is a subsystem we will use to determine lore primacy. Influence is a subsystem we will use to qualify goal eligibility. Influence is not a direct statistic and shifts regularly. Influence. There you go. Okay. So these are a few things that are like core principles of what we're trying to do. Yeah. Yeah, you buy influence by putting down bases of, influence. Yeah, it's a derived stat. It's health, not fort. Yeah, okay. All right. So yeah, it's a score. Exactly, a metric. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. What other objects, right? We know we want to modify secretive. We've got to look at technical expertise and resolve that. We want to add a new tag for cultural influencer. Let's hear. If I know I'm going to do that, let me new tag cultural influencer, and we'll add in tag text here. Okay. All right. Now party machines are already, so Kaisar, cultural power is the planet, not the faction, right? So like cultural power, if it's a planetary tag, and we'll get to that in a second, it means that planet is more valuable, right? Its innate culture is more valuable at large. I think that just increases the value of the planet itself. And then that's that. Yeah, right. Cultural influencer means, so here's the difference, right? Okay. So let's take a look at Echo. Here, we're going to talk about Prism for a second. So let's look at Echo. Where are you, Echo? Here's Echo. It is, does it have the tag note here? I don't know that it does. Hundreds of millions of inhabitants. It may not have the planet tags, but I believe it's a cultural, one of those cultural influence planets, right? So Prism themselves are very much they're very likely to pick up the new tag we create, right? They're going to fit for cultural influencer. I'm thinking of Lyra and Prism predominantly, right? Okay. So that means if they take this cultural influencer, that means that no matter what planet they live on, they are better at influencing the people of that planet, right? Prism and Lyra both are just better at that than pretty much everyone else. As a result, no matter what planet they're on, no matter what world they're engaging with, their units are better at influencing those populations than anyone else, right? That's just a fact about Prism. Echo, probably because Prism grew up there, Echo is an important cultural planet because of that tag, right? Because of the planetary tag. So anybody who controls Echo, their influence echoes out into the universe more importantly. So for example, House Triangulum having assets on this planet should theoretically give them more value than on any other planet in the system that doesn't have that tag, right? Secretive units should be about as worse as Prism units are better. Yeah. So the idea then would be that you have some planets are just better than others, and some factions are just more influential than others by default. Now, this will tie in if you see your planet. Okay, let me give you an example here. So I'll give you an example of a planet that we could make culturally significant. I'm thinking of, where is she? There she is. I'm thinking of the planet Gats. Now, Gats is tech level 0. Gats is a failed colony. It is worth nothing right now, but we could theoretically add onto it a tag like culturally significant, right? And now, even if nobody lives there, even if it's a failed colony, even if it has tech level 0, it's like a monument, right? And then the assets on that planet are suddenly worth more because it's, yeah, right? So this would be something you would do with the goals system. You build a base of influence. Right now, House Fornax could build, theoretically, like a monument or whatever on this planet by changing the planet's tag or adding a new planetary tag and saying, okay, now Gats is, it's a mausoleum world, and we're all going to remember the sins of the past. Yeah, and then it becomes something like a Space Jerusalem or whatever, right? So that's part of the goals system, is how do we adjust, right? And what do we do? Yeah. Are there mechanisms to mitigate or lower a planet's innate influence? So we talked about that, I think, modifying, and I guess this is a question. We talked a little bit about these things, right? How do we, because that's what you do. You blast the assets of an individual faction to clear the planet, but if you want to change the planet itself, you have to change the planet's tech level, or you have to change the planet's amount of people, right? How we move from one to the other, those are goals as well, right? We'll see those in the goals system when we come back to this. So that's how you change base level influence, is you move people from one planet to another, right? Or you find a way to modify the tech level of a planet. So we'll talk about how that works, I guess, when we do goals. That's sort of the goals part of the design. Yeah, you modify their existing base level stuff. Like, for example, if you want to make your D&D character have more hit points, taking the tough feat will apply your constitution bonus, right? It gives you that. Or you can increase your constitution, and that'll just bring your hit points up, because hit points in a way are a measurement of an existing thing. So anyway, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the planetary tags that might be of an effect. Since Gats is TL0, yeah, you have to bring some people there to at least ship some people to Gats, make it a monument outpost. Then you can start building it up again, if that's your plan, and whatever, right? So it gives you a little bit more control over the universe. Yeah. So you always multiply by the TL. Yeah, exactly. So if it's 1, you have to bring it up to at least TL1, right? Nah, TL0 is worth nothing. You have to, this is the thing, making Gats worth a damn in this system is supposed to be a big deal. It's a fucking nuclear wasteland, right? I think it's literally the least valuable planet in the system, or in the sector, because of that very thing. Yeah, it absolutely is. Okay, yeah, right? even Thorg is worth a little bit, right? Even Thorg gives you a little influence. So, something to keep in mind.